Welcome back. In today's video, we're going to be attempting to wire and program one of our motors, getting our robot to move for the first time. So as you can see, I finally have the Barnabas noggin strapped to the back of a robot. And disregarding that for a minute, I want you to focus on the right-hand side of the Barnabas noggin. You'll see two groups of 6 pins. They're arranged so that it's like 2 columns and 3 rows each. And what I want you to do is I want you to think of these as 4 separate groups of pins. So if you look at the lettering on each of these groups, you'll see 3 VS, 9 VS, 10 VS, and 11 VS. So each of those numbers are representing one of these 4 groups. And then the V and the S that follows are a part of that particular group. So the reason that each of these groups has 3 pins is that these are meant to accompany your servo motor wires. So if you grab one of your sets of servo motor wires, each servo motor has 3 wires attached to it. So 3 different colors. I believe it's brown, red, and orange. This particular set of wires can plug in very conveniently into one of those 4 sets of 3 pins. The reason those 3 pins are labeled the way that they are is because they need to coincide with the coloring of your motor wires. So each of those motor wires needs to be doing a specific thing. You can't just kind of flip them and place them however you want. The brown wire is meant to be ground, the red wire is meant to be 5 volts, and the yellow wire is meant to be getting a signal from one of the numbered pins on your Barnabas noggin. So the pins on the noggin are clearly labeled so that you don't misplace things. So when I plug this set of wires into the Barnabas noggin, I need to make sure that the yellow or orange wire, however you look at it, needs to be on the pin that is numbered, not the pin that says G or V. So that just means that the yellow or orange side needs to be facing up. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in one of my servo motors into one of these sets of wires. I'm going to choose to place this guy into the 9 group. And that's that. That's all it takes. So that's our first motor in. Obviously, these other 2 sets of motor wires can easily be done in the same way, but I'm going to wait on that for now. We can do that next time in our next video. But for now, why don't we transition to Arduino, where we figure out how to use this. So I'm back in Arduino, and the first thing I want to do is grab a loop do. Remember, we always need these in our code. And then I'm going to come over to the Motors tab, and there's only one block in here, the Servo block. Now the Servo block, just like all the other blocks we've used, has 2 additional inputs that we need to put in. So 2 numbers. First one is easy to figure out. It says pin number. So as always, it's asking us, hey, where on the robot is the motor physically located? Which pin number is it on? And for us, we decided to go with that group of pins, or at least I did, the group of pins that says 9. So this is going to be located on pin number 9. Now the angle is a little more difficult to understand, and it's important that we have an understanding of this before we try to use our motor. Our motor is not what we would call a continuous rotation motor. It doesn't work like the wheels on a car that can spin in one direction forever. This motor actually has a range of motion of about half a circle, about 180 degrees. So it can only move back and forth between those 180 degrees. Now some motors are slightly different than others. You're never going to have 2 of these servo motors behave exactly alike. So some of them might have exactly 180 degrees of range, some might have like a little bit more, a little bit less. It's up to you to figure out, how your motors behave and if you're pushing them a little too far. So For the angle in this block, we want to pick something between 0 and 180. You can pick other numbers. It's not going to break your motor to pick other numbers. However, your motor is probably not going to behave the way you want it to if you pick other numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and pick 90 because it's like sandwiched right in the middle there between 0 and 180. And before I upload, I want to check the port. COM7 is the only COM available. I am using a noggin. I am using the Barnabas bot. I'm going to go ahead and upload. So let's just make sure as this uploads, we watch the robot carefully. All right, so we got a little bit of motion on the right arm motor. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a comment that says pin number 9. So pin 9 is the right arm. So before that, I didn't actually know what pin 9 was. I had just kind of plugged in one of the 3 servo motor wires, and I didn't know what it was attached to necessarily. I just plugged it into pin number 9. So now we know with certainty that pin 9 is going to be our right arm. Now you'll notice that it only moved one time. So it moved once and now it's staying there. Now the motor is actually still engaged. It is engaged to the angle that is 90 degrees. So it is saying, hey, that position I'm in right there, that coincides with the angle of 90. And it's actually using some power to hold it in that position. If you were to grab your robot's right arm and try and crank it one way or another, you would break the motor. If you do want to change the position of the motor with your hands, you want to make sure you unplug it before doing so. That way the motor ceases to be engaged and you're no longer going to break it by moving it with your hands. Now what would happen if I upload the same exact code? I upload pin 9, angle 90, I do nothing else. What happens? Place your bets. All right, it looks like a whole lot of nothing happens. Now, this is a common misconception that I want to dispel, and that's that the angle refers to how far the motor is going to move. So it moved about 90 degrees the first time. And so you would think, well, if I do this again, it'll move about 90 degrees the second time. And that's not the way this works. The angle is not referring to how far it's going to move. The angle refers to the position it's going to move to. So it's saying 90 degrees is that angle right there that the right arm is currently at. And if I say 90 again, that's where it's going to stay. If I were to change the angle to something very, very close to 90, like 89, I probably wouldn't see much of a difference, if any difference at all. I need to do a drastically different angle. So say maybe I do the angle 10, and then I upload this, and then I can see clear movement. There you go. So with a drastic enough change in the angle, I do see movement back and forth. Just so that we get like our full range here. Let's see what 170 looks like. There you go. All right, so the next thing to do would be to make a program that can continuously move the motor. So moving it, obviously it can't spin in a circle, but move it back and forth repeatedly. So what I would need to do in order to do that is I would need to designate 2 different positions using 2 different servo blocks. So I have one that is 170, I have one that is 10, and you guys looking at this now probably say, hey, this looks familiar. Every time we do this, we also use weight blocks. We do use weight blocks, and we do want to use weight blocks here. However, I think it would be kind of fun to show you what happens when I don't use weight blocks in a code like this. So when I'm trying to move things and I'm saying move to these 2 positions, and I'm not giving it enough time to do so, Yeah, I get a arm motor that spazzes out a little bit. So I'm going to quickly fix this so we can stop this madness. So I'm giving the motors 1 second to reach the position that they've been ordered to go to. And that's a little more controlled. Perhaps I cut this down, so from 1 second to 0.5 seconds, otherwise known as half a second. So that's still pretty controlled, but eventually if I make these weights short enough, they're going to cause some problems, right? They're going to end up going back to what it was looking like before without the weights at all. So that's all I have for you today. In the next video, we're just going to go ahead and wire up the other two motors, and we're going to get them all working in a single program. So I hope you guys stick around for that video, and until then, I'll see you later. Bye.